Okay, I'll pull forward here. Turn that off and jump back in that. And while we're here, we might as well empty the 562 litres that are in the tank. Done. And let's go and find, whoops. Oh, what have you been doing in the hospital? Just getting out of the hospital is not bad for a lot of people I know, since that would mean they've just got off their shift. For most people, going to hospital is not a good thing. Actually, it was a couple of weeks before I started streaming. I got an infection in my right elbow, went to see the doctor, and she said, yeah, you've got something quite serious, here's a course of antibiotics, and she drew a black line around the inflamed area and said, now if this gets any worse, just go to the emergency room. And we woke up the next morning and we looked at it and we said, guess I'm going to the emergency room. No, actually we went the whole day, and by the evening it was worse. And then we got down to the hospital, and the A&E nurse walked in and said, oh, you bought yourself a stay. So, seriously? So I'd just been going into what I was assuming was, yeah, we can give you a stronger dose of antibiotics and you can be on your way. So no, we'll give you a stronger course of antibiotics and you're staying here. So I ended up staying in the hospital for about 4 days, which was entirely unexpected. Yes, I'd heard that too. Now, I know on that's the part of the problem. On Maypole, I planted the house, and then to test that out, because I was running 1.3 beta at the time, I decided I'd put a circle of grass there. And then, oops, that was a mess. I put a circle of grass there and put a tree in the middle. So basically you have the house, you walk out the front door and there's a little circle of grass that you can turn the truck around in, and a tree growing in the middle of that patch. Unfortunately, what I never did was to actually check back in the playthrough to see if the grass had actually grown. Now, if I had, then I could probably have filed a report to say, hey, you know what, your grass isn't growing on Maypole. Although part of the problem is, well, Maypole's not on the mod hub. So, but that could have then prompted me to say, okay, well, I guess what I'll do is I'll pick one of the mod hub farms, like this one, or Marwell Manor, or Mercury, slap down a little circle of grass, put a tree in it, and then see if the grass grows. And then I could have said, okay, right, no, the grass isn't growing. But I didn't do that. And I'm, as we'd usually expect, Giants tested their things. They didn't test everybody else's for that. I'm assuming because they assumed it would work. Yeah. And they are obviously more familiar with Ravensport and Felsbrunn than they are with Marwell or any other maps. Mod hubs maps, which may have quirks in. And I can kind of understand it. I know in my company most of our sales are of a certain type of product, and so most of our testers test with that type of product, and very occasionally we will end up with a problem with a different type of product because our testers didn't test those types of products. And it's, while you expect stuff to work for everything, it's not necessarily a surprise, because obviously, since I think pretty much 90% of our business is a core set type of product, we have to make sure that everything works for that particular product. And sometimes we then just make the assumption that, well, if it works for that, we should be good, because we won't annoy 90% of the company salesmen because something's broken in an application that they use. And I'll fully admit that can be a problem. And we end up with one of the other teams coming to us and saying, you broke something. So, oh, did we? Whoops. And it doesn't take long to fix it, because we're familiar with the changes we made. We just weren't familiar with the impact it would have on that particular division. Oh, yes, that would be generally a bad thing. So, well, good that you're out of the hospital and on the mend. How's this filling up? We're okay. We're at 34%. Okay, I'm going to send that back on the worker. And we can... No, don't want that, don't want that thing. So that's now, I think, pretty much running a full load. Yes, of course it's running about a full load. And it's entirely possible that that grass growing, what is it? It's landscaping. So you're basically, what they're saying is, if you select a grass texture like that, it won't grow grass, it'll just put a green patch of colour on the ground where you place it, but it won't grow grass on any map other than Ravensport and Fellsborough. And I did see someone suggest that possibly it was something they included in the map and not something that is inherent. Part of it is the landscaping tool, but there is an element of it in the map, and obviously the map coders or the map makers didn't code for it because they didn't know to. Now, I don't know the truth of that, so I'll just say who knows. we definitely have to go to the store in the truck, because obviously driving into that building I'm not going to get this auger unloading very easily. Oh. But I do like the interface change at the bottom there, where it actually tells you in words what I'm putting into the back of this trailer, and the physical quantity as well as the percentage quantity. All good stuff. I just wish, what is it, this screen would also include, you know, the words for barley and oats and canola, because I'm looking at these and what I end up doing is I have to go back to here and match that little icon next to the fill bar and say, okay, I'm carrying the little leaves with the spiky bit on the end, so what is that? Oh, that maps to that one, so this is what I've got in the trailer, where's the best price? Not that that's an issue for this map, because there is only one place that will buy stuff. Okay, have a good dinner. I will be here for a while. Said I'll probably run to about 10:30 tonight, since I started at 8:30. But it is a work night, so I don't want to run too long. I'm guessing I'm not going to get any sizable part of this field done. I think if we're lucky we'll get to 30%. Wow, he actually picked up the bit at the end. I'm impressed. Dude, I did not expect a worker to actually do that. But not bad. I find that header is a little unrealistic in flexing. Yeah, I thought I had missed a strip there. You'll notice it wobbles laterally. So as far as mods go, this is, yeah, it's a functional mod, but I'm not sure I'd classify it as a great one. The tractor, of course, is by CMT software and up to his usual excellent designs. I believe he's now working on the Terrian, which is a class wheel loader. I don't know how its size fits in with others. But that'll be nice. I'm hoping we see the Axion 800 series. This is the 900. And it would be nice to see the 800 come in as well, since from my viewpoint, an 800 is far more usable for the styles of farms I play. The 900 not so much. I very rarely do I need a 320 horsepower tractor, or 300 or more, but frequently I need a 200 horsepower tractor, and that's what the 800 series is. Okay, let's grab that screenshot. Hey. How's this doing? Oh, we're up to 90%. Oh yeah. Yeah, things like sugar beets and potatoes are very labour intensive crops. So are sugar cane and poplar. Well, pretty much anything you have to forage is also a high labour crop. I mean, this isn't too bad because I'm doing a running unload. I've got a worker here, and we are filling this up quite quickly. And we've already done one trip to the store, and we've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows, and we're probably 75% of the way to a second load. So this is going to be a hard work. We're going to earn our money. Let's put it that way. But sugar beets and potatoes, they're even more labour intensive. And that's why most people will do soybeans or canola, because the harvester takes longer to fill up, so you're not running around with crop in the back of an auger wagon or a tipper to take somewhere else. And you've usually got enough time to run from where the harvester is out to the store and back before the harvester fills up, unless you've got an incredibly small harvester. But with potatoes it's worse, because the potato harvester capacity is something like 10,000 litres, just under. The sugar beet capacity is 45,000 litres, but even that, it fills up at such an incredible rate that you're just chasing that thing like crazy. They probably make for better multiplayer crops, because like we did on South Mountain Creamery, you can have 1 or 2 harvesters running around and 4 tippers, so the tippers can get out and back before the harvester fills up. And same with foragers. You have 1 forager and two transport tractors per forager, just so that you can keep the forager in motion. When you're playing single player, that's not an easy thing. So people tend to avoid those crops as a daily thing. Now on what is that? That's still got a bit left. Now for something like Mercury Farms, the fields are so small that it is actually feasible to do something like potatoes with a small planter and a small tractor mounted topper and harvester. And I tried that on the initial extended first look, and unfortunately he released the 1.1 map update and said you need to replace your game save if you're playing with Farm Manager, which I was. What are you doing, dude? What about all that crop behind you? Ugh. So, yeah, it's... Pop that there. Does take a little bit to stop. But yeah, so you can and because the the Mercury Farms fields are so small, I'm not going to take all day, 3 hours to harvest a field of potatoes or a field of beets, and because of that, I can basically. Okay, it's done. It's something where, okay, I've harvested that, and it didn't take all day. In fact, the fields are so small that probably the harvesters spend more time turning around than they do actually halving this crop, even if it's a grain harvester like this. I mean, this harvester is running in a straight line for ages. And then once we get to the end, it's going to turn around, it's going to come back, and it's going to be running in a straight line for ages. So it's spending most of its time harvesting. But in smaller fields, where you're turning around almost constantly. What the heck? Okay. Oh, okay then. Well, that's a nuisance. And that's a nuisance because I'm now stuck. There we go. Wow. But as you can see, the flex on the header is a little bit crazy on this. It's not rigid like that. So the header's tipped at about a 45-degree angle to the line of the harvester. So that's kind of weird. Now if I owned this field, I would probably put a patch of grass around that concrete thing, just so that the crop doesn't run right up to it. Yeah, because that's the other problem, is that most silos don't take root crops. Now, advantage on Mercury Farms is the silos, the in-map silos that you can purchase more of, do take grains and do take beets and potatoes. Not sure if they take sugarcane, but then sugarcane isn't particularly realistic for Mercury Farms. So that's why the harvester turned around, was because there's a dirty great big concrete block in the middle of the field. So I can probably set that off running on a worker again, and we can go back to the tractor. But it's always worth doing once. And as you'll have noticed, because the beet harvester has at least 43k capacity, and the potato harvester, the equivalent potato harvester, has less than 10k. When it comes to if you ever decide to do pigs, your best option is to grow beets, because they're easier still to harvest than potatoes, and you either need one or the other. So that's why if I ever do decide to grow beets on a farm this size, I'll find a tiny field, or I will make a tiny field, and I'll plant beets and I'll harvest whatever I end up growing. I'll keep probably about 30,000 litres, maybe a little more, and I'll sell all of the rest. And I've usually got over 150 to 400,000 litres of beets left over, even on a smallish field. But you have to do it at least once. You should do a potato contract at least once, because you will decide never again, because it is that painful. But I do believe they are some of the most profitable crops. It's just the amount of work you have to do to get that income. And some people look at it and say, well, it'll take me 4 hours to harvest a field of beets. If I planted that field with soybeans, it would take me, an hour. Now, the beets will make you more money than the soybeans would. But comparatively, if you had, this field here, it's going to take me longer to harvest it with barley in it than it is to harvest it with soybeans. Possibly by a factor of 2. So if it takes me 6 hours to harvest this with barley in, I can probably do it in 3 hours with soybeans in. But the amount of money I'm going to get at the end of it is probably going to be about the same. Purely because in general the grains scale. If you yield more, they sell for less. If you yield less, they sell for more, but less times more is equal to approximately more times less. So you end up with about the same money at the end of it. But it's the amount of work you have. A lot of people look at it and say it's the amount of work I have to do to get that return. Now, if you're playing Farm Sim to make loads of money, then as quickly as you can, then do soybeans, because that's probably the fastest. That's the least amount of work to get the most efficient amount of income. It's like doing contracts. Probably the most efficient contracts you can do is fertilizer, because a fertilizer spreader runs at 12 miles an hour, I think, has 36 meter spread width, so you can race through a field in very short order. It's much quicker than doing harvesting at 7 miles an hour or 6 miles an hour. It's faster than ploughing, which is about 7 miles an hour, but is only 2 meters wide, rather than, this harvester's probably about 14, 15 meters wide. As I said, most people are looking at time versus income. Now, if you want to do realism, then presuming this farm is Central Europe, you may not do potatoes, you may not do sugar beets, because they're more of an English, Northern European type of crop, where the ground's generally more moist. You're definitely not doing sugar cane, which is more tropical. And go for lawfolds. Predominant crop is barley, as I've said, because of the distilleries. And from there you get your wheat, your soybeans, your canola. They never do sunflowers, because you don't get enough sunlight in Scotland for long enough in the year. And up until recently they never did corn. And the only corn they do today is generally on a test crop, and they're doing it as animal feed. So, if you want to play realism, that's generally why those are the crops I produce in Lawfolds. Predominantly, at least one of my large fields every year, if not 2 or 3, are going to be barley, because it's traditional. 45,000 of each food group. Oh my. Yes. Because in Farm Sim 17, I believe, well, we can probably look at the percentages here. No, I don't have any pigs, so that might not be so easy. No, you can't see it unless, let's have a look. Animals, piggies. Yeah, it doesn't say, but I think corn is 50%, as you said. Potatoes and sugar beets are 5%. But that was actually not only the production, but it was also the amount of food they needed. So on Lawfolds, I'm using 2,500 litres of corn every feed cycle, and I'm using 250 litres of sugar beets every feed cycle. And then the barley or wheat, canola or soybeans or sunflowers, I'm using somewhere between the two. And as I say, I can't remember the exact percentages, but corn is about 50% of the yield, and soybeans is about 5%. And so if you go with that, then that's actually how much they use. So if they've gone and said it's 45,000 for 50 pigs, so basically, what's that? 5 pigs is 4.5. So it's 900 litres of food per pig. And is that per day or per 6 days? Either way, you're saying 900 litres for each food group for the feed period, or 1 day or whatever. But it gives us a number to work with. And yet the yield is more for corn than it is for beets. And I would say, yeah, at that point, why grow them? You're putting more investment into getting your 900 litres of sugar beets, and it's not accounting for much of the productivity. It's kind of like liming fields. Yeah, is it really worth it? On a really big field, it's going to take you an absolute fortune to fill and refill the spreader with lime so that you can get 15% yield bonus on 3 successive harvests. Now in Farm Sim 17, that was ploughing, and so ploughing wasn't a big deal, especially since the planter I was using was let me take over here. The planter I was using was a required cultivating or ploughing before it would work, and consequently it was an easier deal for me. I had to plough or I had to cultivate, so 2 harvests in 3 I would cultivate and get the bonus, or and be able to seed immediately after that, and then 1 in 3 I would have to plough it and then run the seeder over. Now, if you plough it, the seeder works. If you cultivate, the seeder works. So it wasn't a big deal. I had to be doing one or the other anyway. And I had so many fields on that farm in different stages that it wasn't a problem for me to say, well, I've got these 4 fields need ploughing this year, all the rest of them get cultivated, and then the following year these other 4 fields get ploughed. So it wasn't like I'm ploughing every single field and it's taking me a lot longer to plough something than it is to cultivate it. But I have to do one or the other, so ploughing wasn't a cost, or wasn't a significant cost, should I say. But liming is definitely a cost. And sometimes you want to turn around and say, is it worth me running lime? It's like oilseed radish as a fertilizer. Yes, the seed for oilseed radish is cheap, and that is the information at the top left, which tells me how full the harvester is and everything else. That is the stop. That is the is it vehicle information? In Farm Sim 17 it was called Glance, because it gave you information on all the vehicles that are running at a glance. I believe it's called the vehicle information mod or something like that. So I can see the relative fill levels of all the equipment that's currently running. In multiplayer that tells me all of the players, and in single player it tells me obviously all of the helpers. Now you'll notice that the truck's not listed, in spite of the fact I have a load of stuff in the back of the truck, and that's because the engine's not on and it doesn't have a helper in it. I have seen rain once, because I can confirm it doesn't rain in shelters. However, I believe that was on Ravenport. I haven't seen rain on any of the mod maps. We're full. Okay. Once again, don't try this at home. I'm not supposed to drive in front of the harvester through the crop as it's going. So yes, the whole deal with oilseed radish. You can use oilseed radish. It's cheaper than using fertilizer, but it delays your harvest. Oilseed radish grows slower than all of the other crops by about a factor of 50%. So if you get one growth stage every, let's say every day, and you don't, but let's say you do. So today we plant something. Tomorrow morning at the same time it will be at growth stage 1. The day after it would be at growth stage 2. If you plant oilseed radish, then I plant it today and it would be tomorrow evening before the oilseed radish is grown and ready to plough in. And then it's going to take me 4 days to grow the actual monetary crop after that. So the question then comes, do I want to delay the growth of my crop by a day and a half in order to save a little bit of money on fertilizing? And remember, the problem there is I've got to prepare the ground, so potentially I have to cultivate it. I'll leave that out. And I've got to cultivate it, I've got to seed it, I've then got to cultivate it in, and then I can plant my regular crop. And so it's a big sort of delay in production. And we come back to our do I want to, if I want to maximize production, I want stuff in the ground as fast as I can. I want it out of the ground as fast as I can so I can sell it. And we come back to soybeans. I can harvest soybeans in less time than I can harvest most other crops, and so therefore I'm less time harvesting and more time making money. And so, yeah, planting oilseed radish is a delay, but it saves you money in the long run, but it's a delay, so it delays your income. So it may not be as cost effective as just throwing fertilizer at it. But if you're playing with seasons, it does make sense, because you've got 6 months of the year that you're growing something, followed by 6 months of the year where your ground is just sitting there waiting for the spring so you can start planting again. And I think we okay, 22%. Oops. And yes, the fence is there. I remembered this time. And we just reversed into the trailer. Nice big dent in the side of it. And I think, probably more people used oilseed radish when they were playing with seasons than in any other playthrough. Because making income gets you places. It's saving money, doesn't make you income. It just saves you some money in the long term. Now, I'm not saying saving money is a bad thing, but making income is the aim of the game. And okay. There we go. So yes, and as far as the mod on the top left hand side, which gives me a rundown of all my active equipment, I grew very accustomed to having that on Farm Sim 17. I played with it in every playthrough. It doesn't just give you information on your equipment, it also gives you information on your animals. Now, I don't know if this one does. What did I say it was? Vehicle inspection mod, I believe it's called, as I said. I don't know if it tells you about your animals, but in Farm Sim 17 it would tell you, basically, if you had over 100 of any given animal, it would start reporting, oh, you've got 126 sheep, and so every time you got a new sheep it would tell you. It would tell you how full the current wool pallet was. But it wouldn't tell you how many pallets you had ready to sell in the wolf spawn point. So it was of limited use there. It tells you, it doesn't tell you how much milk you have, but it does start panicking if you've got too much manure or too much slurry in storage. It doesn't like too much of that stuff sitting around, and that's for both pigs and cows. And it warns you when the animal feed level drops to for want of a better term, the red level. I believe